Have you ever seen a film or TV show in which the main character found themselves in this place just couldn't be explained, whether it was so unusual, so enigmatic, or something else entirely? It was so hard for them to believe what they were seeing. You would think this could only happen in a fantasy world, but that's not the case. Many places on Earth mystify scientists all the time, and some of them seem scientifically impossible. In fact, we find new places like this every day, and sometimes they just can't be explained. Come and take a look at 12 of the most mysterious places that scientists still can't explain. Number 1. The Butterball by Krishna. Somewhere in the world there is a rock that literally defies the laws of physics, gravity, and common sense. Why? Well, because it's a boulder that weighs hundreds of tons, it's perched upon a slope, and yet it doesn't move from that spot the position of. The rock is so surprising that it looks like it might roll down the slope at any moment. However, it stands firm, and tourists can even take shade under it when they go and visit. It's been unmoved by tsunamis, earthquakes, or even cyclones for over 1,200 years, which doesn't make any sense because just look at how it's positioned on the side of that hill. It seems as though it should be tumbling over at the slightest breeze, and yet you can't. Sit under it and have no fear of it falling on you. If you look at the top side of the rock, you'll see something just as unexplainable. Specifically, you're going to find a sheared section of the rock. But how the rock got that? Shear does unclear. The easy answer is erosion. But some feel that erosion would never have caused such a shape in the rock. Some argue that it's a natural formation. But I find it hard to believe that a boulder of this size is anything other than natural. Moreover, it won't tumble off the slope it's on, so maybe gravity is to blame. Some attribute it to friction, but considering that the boulder is 20 feet tall, 16 feet wide, and supposedly weighs 208.80 tons, it appears to be floating on the edge of the slope, barely holding its position. The structure is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it was supposedly constructed between the 7th and 8th century CE. Before we continue, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. Number 2. The enigmatic site. That were never necessary sounds like a perfect way to introduce something on this video, wouldn't you say? And in this case, it's somewhat accurate based on the image you're seeing right now. What you're seeing is a recreation of something that allegedly took place way back in the 1960s. According to the story, there was a forest where 2 sequoia trees were found connected by a weird resin, and when they were discovered, it was then reported to scientists. And they didn't know what the heck was happening. And so they donned some hazmat suits to investigate, and nobody returned alive. I'm kidding on that part. But it did sound dramatic, didn't it? Seriously, is this something that could have actually happened? Well, yes, it could. We do know that trees make resin and other kind of products from their bark. And there are some trees that even have the ingredients inside of them to make things like bubble gum. But you may be asking, how would the resin get from one tree to another? Well, the answer is that they may have had help. Animals are not above using their surroundings to set traps. So what if one such creature like a bird perhaps would find out about the sticky stuff and somehow stretched it from tree to tree so that it could catch unsuspecting prey that would potentially recreate the image you're seeing now? It's not really probable, but it's also not impossible, and that's what makes it so much fun to talk about. But what do you think about the nature of all this gooey resin and these 2 big trees? As always, you can let me know what you think down below by using the hashtag 99millions. Third place, waterfall nanogod in reverse. Now let's get back to talking about gravity for a bit, because it's always bringing, but what's not a joke or a hoax is the nanogod reverse waterfall. You're going to find this one in India, and it's a site that many have been baffled by for the most basic of reasons. As you watch the clip of this reverse waterfall, you're going to notice that things are well going in the wrong direction. Specifically, this waterfall is flowing upwards due to the laws of gravity that should be impossible, as gravity only has one direction on Earth, that being down. But here you can clearly see that the water is going up and that the water going down isn't even perceived. So I mean, it's a clear case of anti-gravity, right? Well, there is a scientific explanation for this particular one, believe it or not, and it has to do with wind. The location of this water is perfectly situated so that it deals with incredibly high wind gusts. Those gusts hit the waterfall right when it's starting to fall downward, and as a result, that water is sent flying upwards over 100 feet. That's why it looks like a reverse waterfall, because it's being sent so high that it looks like it's flowing upward now. I'll admit, it is quite the visual, but it can also be explained with science. And for further proof of this, if you do look at the base of the waterfall before things start flowing upward, you can very clearly see the water going down. It's out of the wind zone there, but once it gets deeper, that's when the wind picks it up, and things go quite crazy. Still quite the visual though. The fourth, boulders from Meraki. Now here's another story. In fact, there are going to be quite a few in this video, so just prepare yourself for that, geology enthusiast. What are the special thing about these rocks? Well, they're incredibly spherical boulders that you're going to find around a certain beach in New Zealand. They're buried in the sand, and they've made people say all kinds of things about them as a result, which includes how they make the beach look like it's full of planets. Some of them are even cracked and have made people call them eggs as a result. So if it's not obvious, the mystery is over how they've been formed, which has been in debate for quite some time according to scientific research. These rocks were formed over a long period of time from organic matter that was gradually distorted into their present-day form by the forces of water and erosion. Number 5. Angelita Cenote. Have you ever heard of an underwater river? It's not a trick question. You may be thinking that the idea of a rive inside of a river is impossible, but it's actually not. There are several cases these rivers being found all over the world, including with Cenote Angelita in Mexico. In this one's case, a thin layer of hydrogen sulfate separates the salt water from the fresh water above it, and that creates a river within a river and makes for a very mysterious place for divers to go down into. The real mystery here is how many of these underwater creations exist in the world. Now, I personally know of another one over in Asia that was created much differently and even has its own current, but how many more of them are out there, and have you ever swam in one? Let me know your expertise. Flight geyser. Number 6. When humans and nature collide, it typically does not end well, but the Fly Geyser is the exception to that rule. This geyser can be found in Nevada on Fly Ranch. While drilling a well, workers hit geothermal water that was about 200 degrees Fahrenheit because that water was not suitable for any kind of agricultural. The geyser was then left alone. Fast forward to 1964, and another geyser was made by another company and then sealed. But that seal didn't hold. And do you want to guess what happened next? Well, it created another geyser that was so filled with organic material that it doesn't even look like it should when it shoots out of the ground. In other words, people accidentally created something kind of cool when they began drilling around this place. But let's not test our the seventh abyss. When it comes to superstition and what certain people believe, if you give them a mysterious place that's unknown in various ways, they're going to make some stories about what really may be happening there. In Yemen, there's an infamous hole known as the Well of Hell, and depending on the story that you might hear, it's either a place where genies reside, the bad kind, or it's a gateway to the underworld. Despite what you may be thinking, it is not actually a well, but a sinkhole, one that's nearly perfectly round that boggles the minds and freaks people out. People were so afraid of this hole that no one dared to send into it until 2021, and it turned out to be something rather incredible. The hole itself is believed to be millions of years old, so one could only speculate and imagine. Number 8. The Glowworm Caves of Watamu. This one does kind of speak for itself, but I have to talk about it anyways. It's what I get paid to do in New Zealand. A major tourist attraction you can go to is the Watamu Glowworm Caves on North Island within Those caves are a surprise glowworm. Specifically, they're a species of glowworms that can only be found in New Zealand. When you enter into the caves, you're not going to see anything at first, but then you're going to hit areas where there are literally thousands of these glowworms. They make their homes on the walls of these caves, and they can give you quite the light show without any need for provocation. This is absolutely an example of nature working wonders on its own. And it's even said that the ancient Maori discovered these caves and felt that it was a sig. The ninth, hidden locations. This next one, I'm going to play the role of spoiler because these mystery spots aren't exactly mysterious or unexplainable. They're actually very scientific. If you know where to look now, if you were to go to one of these places, you would inevitably see houses or certain spheres and more that appear to defy gravity. Before your very own eyes, the houses are going to be tilted, and yet they're not falling down, or the spheres will be seen as breaking the laws of physics via their positions. It is a cool thing to see, and it would appear to be magic to those who are not in the know. But as it turns out, these are simply illusions that are caused by certain kinds of steep terrain. That illusion is added by what you're experiencing within the houses and what you see around you. So in position 10. The hills of chocolate. Massive hills that are made out of chocolate. Well, that simply seems like dream come true. However, if you head to the Behold Islands in the Philippines, you're going to see a series of very UD mounds that many people say look like chocolate truffles. Disappointingly, though, they are not. And so that leaves a whole lot of questions like, were these a relic of some forgotten project in the country? Well, no, they're a natural part of the land, and there are actually 1,200 of them, further adding to the wonder and the mystery. And what's more, they range in size from relatively small to 120 meters tall. Now, if you're wondering more about the name, when it's really dry out, the hills adorn a brown color that makes them look even more like chocolate. Number 11. As the river boils. Here is a true mystery that no one has ever been able to solve. In the Amazon rainforest, there's a stretch of water within its legendary river that is quite literally boiling all of the time. So long has this river been boiling that it's been used by the locals for many years to even cook their food, wash their clothing, and do a whole lot of other things. The locals have decided to affectionately call it La Bamba, and that's because it's really super hot. The waters in that tributary can reach 100 degrees Celsius, but the question now becomes, why is the river boiling? Well, that is the mystery here. Nobody really knows for sure, but there are many theories, which includes geothermal vents and other natural causes, but for now no one seems to know why the water boils like it does. And in the series, the Lake of Jellyfish in Palau is an example of how nature expands and contracts over time. Once upon a time, there were a lot of jellyfish living in this lake. However, when the water around it began to recede, leaving the jellyfish all alone in the lake, they adapted to their new environment. If you ever find yourself in that lake, you should definitely go see some moon jellyfish. You'll notice how different they are from each other up close. For example, golden jellyfish don't have much of a sting because there aren't any predators nearby. But why bother? When you have your jellyfish brethren nearby, there's no need to sting anything, right? I simply want to express my gratitude for your time and interest in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the future one. So long.